Hi, the good news is that I got it to work on my Mac, but that is using my work computer. Of course, this is outside of work hours, but I couldn't get it to work on my Windows machine. The main thing that was added were this fixture folder, which has reusable test fixtures and helper for setup and tear down. It has, like, you can use a persistent, it can launch a persistent context if you tell it that you want a persistent page and a persistent context. Then it will know to attach to a browser, which you can launch through this debugger start command, similar to a previous video. The new thing is that you can use LLM page and LLM context, and if you use a page, it will launch a persistent browser on port 9222, and then it will launch the Playwright MCP agent, and then it will launch this TSX command that will allow you to use prompting in your Playwright code. And that's the main thing that I wanted to show today. Before I go there, you need to make sure that your .env file has keys for the LLM. And then a new one is this test agent folder, which I copied from Mahesh's this repository. I wanted it here so that I can modify stuff easily. And so when you check out the code, you need to right click npm install this one, and then also npm install in this folder. And what it does, it pretty much launch. So after you npm then it will be the code, it will launch if you use LLM page, it will launch a persistent browser. Then it will do this one, but then it actually connect to the persistent browser also, and then it launches this, which then listen on port 3000 for prompt commands, and then that's how it interact with the web page. So thanks to Mahesh for that code. So you can see that you just go to this run and debug. I also attached the VS Code launch file. So if you go to run and debug and just click start debugging, you can put breakpoints and stuff like that. It tries to first go to google.com, and then after that, this is using Playwright code, then it run prompt, it then tells give natural language what it wants to do. And then you can see that the prompt is like this. I added some more action information, and then at the end it tells us, it tries to write out the code in Playwright also for us. The reason why I did that is because I want to I don't want to use prompting all the time. I want to do the test through code and run the prompt as a backup. That way, and then if it output the code for me, I can just look at the CI/CD results and then update my code without having to figure that part out. So I wanted the way that Playwright best practice get my role, but I also know that XPath is more powerful, so I also wanted to output the XPath for me in case I want to use that. And so you can see that it tries to run the prompt. It failed though, so it output failed browser agent action. The reason why it failed was that there was a CAPTCHA restriction. So this is where it was doing stuff connecting to a persistent browser, then it went to google.com correctly through Playwright. However, when it tries to do the other one, it got a CAPTCHA problem, and so that's where it failed. What I did was I found an automation exercise website where I can demonstrate this more. So I launch it, and first it tries to launch the MCP, Playwright MCP. If there's a port conflict, it kills the port, and then try again. It does it for these port because those are the port that I expect to be used up. Then after that, it launches this Chromium that you can't really interact with right now. It goes to this URL, then it runs the prompt to search for polo shirts. So if you look right here, the home page is like this. So I just tell it that we need to search for polo shirt, and I expect it to know to go to product and then search for product or click on this polo. Then so you can see that it says that it passed the browser agent action, and it output the code for me using XPath and using Playwright best practice. I have both of these code. The reason is I want to be able to use the prompt as a backup and not the primary way to test stuff, just because I want things to be more deterministic, and only run the prompt if something fails. That will reduce costs also. And then after that, so you can see that the URL now, it did the right thing because the URL that it's landed on is correct as we expect. And so the test passed. We can then look at this one, and then you can see what it did in the LLM is not really recorded here, but this is pretty much what we have. And so you can see that with this, we can mix code and prompt. That way, when you need to set up things like through the API, you can do that. And then you can do prompt to get tests written faster, and then you can go in your, if you have this running in CI/CD, you can then use the code generated and then flesh out your tests when you need to. So you have to be specific for it to work well. And so those are what I have. So another thing is you can see that with this, you can't really see what it's doing in the browser, even in headed mode, because you can see in here that it's headed, but you can't really see in the browser. Before I was able to, I don't know what happened. It's not able to anymore. What you can do though is launch this debugger start command, depending on Mac or not, and then you can use the command right here. So this is for a Mac. You can kill the ports here, then you can tell it to launch the Playwright MCP on port 8931 so that it will listen here, but connect it to a persistent browser on this port, and then you can tell it to do this. So you can right click and new terminal add folder. So make sure you put the .env file under this test agent, and then you launch the debugger. It will launch a blank browser like this. Then you would open in a new terminal, and then you would run this. Then you will be able to go to localhost 4000, and over here in the flows, you can then put in your prompt, and it will then do stuff in here. That way you can test out your prompt in real time, and then when you find a good prompt, then you put it into your test code here, and that's how I would build up a test using prompt. And then whenever you need to, you can run it and then debug it and then write more code here. I still need to figure out why when it uses this, the browser doesn't, I can't interact, I can't look at the browser, but this is how I plan to automate from now on to be able to switch between code and prompt.